So we're live streaming now?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'll call the meeting to order. Matt, do you want to do a roll call, or do you have the, or if not, Sherry can do it.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
think
have the
Jerry has
list.
the list there.
So is that a yes? Okay. David Allen,
Here,
Cody Mayer,
Here.
Matt Tuccini,
Here.
Rob,
Here.
Dennis Smith, Callie New. Dennis is excused absence. So we have a quorum.
great. So now I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Matt, good. Looking for a second. Cody, thank you. Any changes needed? Any questions, discussion about it? No? Okay, I will go ahead and vote. All in favor of the agenda, say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That motion carries. Agenda is approved. Next is a consent agenda, which is just the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, September 17th. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move.
Rob, thank you. Looking for a second. Callie, thank you. Any questions, discussion, additions to the minutes? No? Okay. All in favor, say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That carries. Next, we have the treasurer's report. Mary, if you'd like to go ahead.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Just start out with a quick review of the financial report as of September 30th, 2020, which is the end of our fiscal year. A few revenue items still need to be recorded, which is just going to be some minor interest rolling into the accounts. To summarize, the month of September, we had about $10,382 in expenditures. Kind of detailed that those are mostly wages and consulting fees, as well as a reimbursement on the DLP streets project for McClellan. So overall, we ended the year with revenues exceeding expenditures by just under $1.6 million. That carried forward to our fund balance on the balance sheet. So we ended the year with $5.1 million of fund balance. The allocation of that fund balance, we still have some reserves. About $2 million is reserved for bond payment allocation. $1.3 million was the TIF allocation that we had approved earlier in the year for DLP. We have some prepaids of just over $1,000, which leaves us with $1.58 million among the projects. And I've detailed that also on the cover sheet. These funds can be used for the remaining expenditures for fiscal year 20, as well as we'll be carrying those forward into fiscal year 21 for the TIF allocations that we're going to be looking at next. Other than that, we wrapped up the year right around budget, and any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Questions, anybody? Do we want to approve this treasurer's report before we move to the other two items, or do you want to do the other two items first, Mary?
This can be approved first.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the treasurer's report. Thank you, Matt. Second. Thank you, Rob. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That carries. Treasurer's report is approved. Back to you, Mary.
Okay, I'm going to go right to item 5C, which is the TIF allocation, because I think that the state invoice for the SBRF is later. I'm not quite sure.
Yes.
So for the fiscal year 21 TIF allocations, these were presented initially in our budget. What we usually do is we get a good estimate, a good feel for what our revenues are going to be for the fiscal year. And we carry forward everything that we have in fund balance from the prior year. And the brownfield plans are very careful about how those funds need to be expended. Once we take care of all the administrative costs and bond-related activities, we end up with some leftover money, so to speak, and this is how we start allocating our TIF allocation to our developers. So this year, starting with Nestledown, that project was completed. We do have about $1,000 that we need to send to the state brownfield redevelopment fund. And after that, we're going to end up with about $5,000 left over in fund balance. And the recommendation is that we distribute that back to the taxing jurisdictions. Kind of taking your attention, so to speak, on that green line, the green column on the spreadsheet that I provided too. For Fund 237 is the DLP. The city has about $853,000 in eligible expenditures. Accruing some interest gets us just under $900,000, looking for approval to distribute that back to the city. And then it gets interesting with DLP because I know we're looking at we don't have any eligible expenditures yet. We did approve $1.3 million. That left about $3 million of the budgeted 1.2 that we had approved for fiscal year 21. I'm recommending that we pull $1 million out of their fund balance and pay them an additional 1.3 million. So should this be approved, and once we get eligible expenditures from DLP, we would be able to immediately cut a check to them for about $2.7 million. For 231 Patisserie, we would be able to reimburse all of their eligible expenditures. Liberty Way has an interesting breakout. That's going to have a total of $437,000 in expenditures we can reimburse, as well as distributing $12,000 to our local redevelopment fund. And I'll try and summarize the Founders Landing distribution. That has, of course, the cascade of expenditures there that we need to reimburse in order. So I took the total amount that we had available for developer reimbursement this year and just kind of went tier by tier, paying off the higher priorities first. So we've got $426,000 that needs to go to the parking deck debt service for them. We have $55,711, which is the accrued balance of the local redevelopment fund transfers that need to be made. There's that $103,000 that we've been carrying since 2016 to reimburse for the prior parking deck. And that leaves, believe it or not, just over $5,000 that we can actually reimburse against the long-term obligations to Landing Development Group.
Mary, I had a quick question about the accrued interest column, the whole column.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I assume that that's the total amount added up of interest for prior years plus this year, not just this year's interest. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Because I was going to say otherwise, on Liberty Way, we're paying less than the interest, but I thought that was the case. Good, thanks.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Mary? And we'll also have discussion on this, but I don't know if you have any quick questions for Mary. If not, okay, go ahead, Callie.
Yeah, Mary, I'm just trying to understand, I guess, if you wouldn't mind just talking about the Duke Life Point one more time. Is it just that there aren't eligible expenses yet, so you're kind of shifting money around to pay for other expenses?
Yeah, we knew that there were going to be some long-term obligations, some eligible expenses coming up. So last year, I just wanted to make sure that we had already had kind of a reserve funds available so that we could make a distribution to them without having to wait for this October meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add in, we did receive the documentation from DLP on September 29th. So I'm still kind of going through it, didn't have it ready for this meeting. So at the next meeting, at the November meeting, we'll have a full accounting and a full invoice review for all of that, for all that documentation. And then that will be in it. Just at first blush, it's right about or just above their $10 million allocation. We can only fund up to $10 million or approve up to $10 million. So they'll be, after that's all approved, then Mary can cut the check for the 2.7. I'll just add in one other thing, that's a lot more revenues than what we originally anticipated within the brownfield plan. And they'll be paid off much more quickly than anticipated as well.
Any other quick questions on the table before we'll move to a motion and discussion too? So, all right. So now I'm looking for a motion to authorize disbursement of brownfield TIF revenue for the MBRA brownfield projects in the amount shown on the attached recommendation, which you just went over. With this one, revenues will be distributed to taxing jurisdictions and DLP payment made upon approval of invoice documentation of full property tax payment, or whatever other motion like that you'd like to make. Thank you, Matt. Do we have a second? Thank you, Dennis. Okay, discussion. Any further discussion, issues, questions about this disbursement? Is everybody clear what we're talking about? Any issues at all?
I will note that the tax payment has been paid. There was an issue with one of the DLP parcels, and that was paid yesterday.
Good. Okay, so all in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That motion carries. And Sherry, I don't have to sign anything on this one, right? This one's just a,
That's correct.
okay, good. All right. And so, Mary, are we going to wait till later for the state invoice?
I
Or do you
thought
wanna
it
do it
was
now?
later in the meeting.
Yeah,
It
that's
is,
fine.
it's like the last item, but we could certainly pull it forward if everyone wishes. It's under the invoices. It's very last item.
We can, well, Mary, do you want to do it now or not?
I can talk about it now real quick,
Sure,
and then
okay.
it'll expedite the end of it.
Okay.
Projects that came on board with brownfield plans after 2013, if I recall, are subject to a capture amount that goes to the state. It's the 3 mills of the 6 mills set. So they invoice us every year after we complete our annual reporting.
Do we have any questions about that for Mary? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the $6,641.50 to pay to Michigan. Thank you, Dennis. Do we have a second? Thank you, Cody. Any discussion, questions about this? Okay, all in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
All opposed? That motion carries. So this one I do sign. I'll put this aside, Sherry. So that,
Indeed.
and
Thank
so am I correct, Sherry, to this time I'm not going to scan them and send them to you, or I am going to scan them?
No, I'm going, I'd like you to sign your originals that you have.
Gotcha.
I'll pick them up and replace them.
Good. All right. Gotcha. Okay. So that takes care of this down here. And good. So now we're ready for our first public comment. And I don't see any in the participant list. We don't have any, do we, Sean, that you know of?
You're on mute, Sean.
I don't see on our, in the participants, I don't see anybody, but. Oh, well,
Sorry, I'm on mute. There's nobody. Sorry.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so closing public comment. Announcements by the chair. I'm not going to have any today because we have so much to do. Report from the executive director, Sherry.
And I will keep mine brief as well. Lots of communications this month with 5 projects in play. The presentation to the City Commission went very well, I thought, and thank you to David and Mac for their contributions to it. I think it went over very well. I did participate in the MEDC dialogue, pardon me, that I had mentioned last month regarding their strategic plan with a letter that followed up. I'm also going to be participating with the MEDC survey, so it'll give me another opportunity to reinforce the issues that are pertinent to us. I have scheduled a November library presentation to the library board. I attended the DDA meeting. That went very well, and the city manager was very, very supportive there, and there was not at all an issue with that in support of the Customs House TIF. I am on the agenda for Monday's LDFA meeting to discuss the TIF for the UP State Bank. And the only other thing I had on there, and we can approach this at the end of the meeting, but we will need to schedule a November meeting. Typically on our calendar, we have a November-December meeting, and we do it in December. But with all the business we have going on, I suspect there will be things that we should look at a November meeting. So we'll bring that to the end. And then I will be working on binders for all of you for our projects, because it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of stuff going back and forth. So I will have those for you earlier then or by the November meeting. So, any questions?
I just have one quick thing, Sherry. If we do meet in November, and if because of the status of the executive orders from the governor, et cetera, is such that we're supposed to meet in person, I'm going to want, before I show up, I'm going to want some assurance about distance and ventilation, et cetera, because I don't do those things because of the executive order, right? I do those for epidemiological reasons, and I'm going to continue to do those regardless of the order. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be quite interested in that. I hope we can continue to do this by Zoom. If we can't, I'm not just going to show up in a small room sitting next to y'all. So
Right.
we'll have to figure that out.
It's looking like the state legislature, did pass a bill. It's just waiting for the governor's signature now. So we should be able to continue like this just fine.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Anything else for Sherry? Okay. Next, we have project updates, Founders Landing. I don't know if, Mac, I don't know if you have anything, or Sherry.
You know, I think we can be really quick on these. Most of the action items are included below. So I don't think there's any other specific I will provide one quick update. Is we did some TIF projections for the whole Founders Landing, which Mary has described now as its own little city because of the complexities with multiple parties and everyone. And so we'll be sharing that with you and talking about it next month. It's just for information, but gives an idea about the projections for all the activities, including the next parking deck and revenues for that, and the pier redevelopment as well. So kind of looks at the overall financial picture of Founders and projects out the available TIF revenues. So we'll be sharing that next month.
Great. And Mac, did you mean by that you don't have any other updates on the other projects as well, and we can move on, or do you want to say anything else?
No, I think we're fine. That we'll be fine, I think, with the other projects. So,
And Sherry, is that okay with you too? No further updates for
Yes,
okay,
indeed.
great.
Yep. Thank you.
And we have no unfinished business, so we're now to new business number 11. The first is the Founders Landing Parcel 2A Townhomes. We have two things here: the Eagle work plan and the development and reimbursement agreement. So, Mac, do you want to say a few words about this?
Yep, I'd be happy to. This is in anticipation of a Act 381 work plan for the vapor mitigation system that was required. I believe we had some discussion about that, whether it was necessary for the townhome. Some additional sampling was conducted. It turns out that they do have exceedances above vapor screening criteria at the townhomes, and they will need to install a vapor mitigation system, much the same as they did at the Fairfield Inn. We did have an allocation for them of $159,850. The cost may be a little bit higher, and what we're suggesting is that they go ahead and provide the Act 381 work plan and get approval from the state for state tax capture in whatever that amount is. We can only at this point approve the $159,850. But again, at the end of the project, we'll see what sort of all the funding is, what all the requirements are, where the budget allocations came out as opposed in compared to actual expenditures. So what we're seeking here, that the document is a document of the of the authority. And I typically request authorization to submit these Act 381 work plans so the authority knows what's going on with respect to these projects. It's not ready yet, but we presume that it'll be ready soon for submittal, and we'd appreciate authorization to submit the Act 381 work plan.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to authorize the submittal of the Act 381 work plan for environmental eligible activities to Eagle for consideration of state tax capture approval for parcel 2A townhomes. Callie, thank you. Looking for a second. Matt, thank you. So any further questions, issues about this from anybody? Okay, all in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That carries. And that's no signature on that one. Good. And then Mac, the other piece, the development reimbursement agreement.
Yep, this is a companion piece with that. Once those expenditures are made, we need to have the development and reimbursement agreement with the folks who are expending the money to lay out the process for that. I will say that Cody passed the test of reviewing information carefully and identified excuse me, that's for the next one. I apologize for that. I'll save the kudos to Cody for.
Well, he deserves 2 sets, so that's good.
Yeah, yes. So this is a kind of our standard reimbursement agreement. I wanted to say something important with these, and Mary picked up on this. Originally, these parcels along parcel 2 were kind of bonus parcels. We had them included within the brownfield plan, but didn't consider either any expenditures or any revenues. We were able to allocate some eligible activities to these projects because we had a budget surplus or available balance in there and allocated those. Originally, I was kind of looking at those as having, okay, those develop and now we've got some additional dollars to pay off bonds or to return to the taxing jurisdictions. But as we look at that financial projection, the difficult years for the all of the bonds are in the early years. Once all the projects are built out, 1, 2, and 3 Marquette Place are built out, there's available resources there. And so what I'm asking that's different from the document that you have in there is to go back to the standard arrangement of allocation for the brownfield TIF cascade and to put the city or brownfield bonds above the cascade, above the position of reimbursement for that. Those were different in this case, but we'd like to go back to the standard arrangement where it's the authority receives the administrative cost, the city bonds are paid off, any balance for the city bonds are paid off, and then the balance goes to the reimbursements. So it's a little bit different. I apologize for that change on the fly here, but I think that's an important consideration for those first couple of years in the peer redevelopment. There may be some shortfalls. These folks are paid out in a fairly quick amount of time, 5 to 6 years. And so it wouldn't significantly impact their payback, but would provide an important cash flow for the bonds for the peer redevelopment primarily. So.
And so, Mac, that's a change that will still be made in this document? Is that what you're?
Yes, yeah, we're asking for approval and authorization for that, but we will change it back to the standard cascade allocation where it's city bonds are above, city or brownfield bonds are above the payment for the reimbursement for the developer.
And so this is another example of something we're authorizing today, but won't be signing it today. Is that right?
Yes, there will need to be some work on it. Yep.
Got it. All right.
Some revisions.
Good. So I'm looking for a motion to approve this development reimbursement agreement. Thank you, Dennis. Looking for a second. Thanks, Matt. Any other, and that's as it will be amended, as Mac just mentioned. Any further discussion or questions about this? Okay, all in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That motion carries. All right, next, Founders Landing Parcel 2B Fairfield Inn Development and Reimbursement Agreement. Matt?
Thank you. And I will say, as you kind of picked up, there's a lot of stuff here, but it's all very much the same sort of information. So I tried to highlight what those differences were. And again, now I can say kudos to Cody on picking up the 2C. Originally, we had included 2B and 2C in this agreement because Market Opportunity acquired both of those parcels. But there really weren't any eligible activities allocated to them, and we didn't really know what that development was in that case as well. In communications with Market Opportunity and their review of the draft, they also said that that might be a separate project, might be sold separately and done separately. So they also have requested that it only relate to parcel 2B. So we'll make that same change in the Cascade in this one, because it is done in the same way. Make that change in the Cascade and remove parcel 2C from the reference points of this agreement.
And so once again, this will be changed, not signed today, but we're going to authorize today.
Correct. The final, yep, the final note.
Good. So I'm looking for a motion to approve this development and reimbursement agreement with the modifications. Matt, thanks. Looking for a second. Cody, thanks. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor, say yes. Yes. All opposed? That motion carries. Oh, this is going so fast. I'm so happy.
It's always interesting. Basically, these agreements say, if you guys build the stuff, we'll pay you. But it takes, 15 pages to say that. So.
Right. Well, and I'm glad it does, because now it used to be that Kelly signed these. I wasn't so worried about it. Now I have to sign them. It makes me much more nervous.
Your name is on them. You want to pay attention here.
Right. Okay. So now we're to Founders Landing Parcel 3B, the Berger Street Extension Huntington bond payment. Do you have anything that we need to say about this, Mac?
No, I will say this is a portion of this overall capital improvements bond, a really good way for us to do these projects, smaller infrastructure projects, as opposed to having a separate bond issue for a smaller project. This is the Berger Street Extension. Importantly, the work that's done under the Customs House will allow this to be completed as well. But this is a portion of that larger bond payment that's necessary, that's allocated to the Brownfield Authority into that. And so it's smaller than the original. The amortization is $13,800 for that project.
So I'm looking for a motion to pay $13,800 to Huntington. Dennis, thank you. Looking for a second. Cody, thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That motion carries, and I'll put this aside to sign for you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Okay. DLP Brownfield Plan Amendment for Beacon House.
As we've discussed before, Beacon House is moving forward on their project on a portion of the DLP property. There was some amendments to all of the agreements with DLP to allow that to happen. They do have eligible activities on that property, and we've kind of been a little bit in limbo, waiting for DLP to submit its information to see if they had any budget allocation left in their $10 million if they didn't utilize all of that. At least the preliminary documentation appears that they're going to be at that $10 million there. And so as a result, in order to provide any support for Beacon House, we would need to amend the Brownfield plan to increase the amount of dollars. We did that a few years ago for McClellan Avenue, you may recall, took money from the local Brownfield fund and moved it into infrastructure to pay for that. We'd suggest the same kind of arrangement. Unfortunately, I couldn't get this done in a reasonable amount of time before the meeting and get that to you. So we will be taking that up next month. I spoke with Brian, the project engineer, about that. They are conducting these activities, will be conducting these activities. They do have to have a vapor mitigation system and environmental eligible activity there in the project. They wouldn't have been able to get state tax capture approval for that anyway in the time frame that they had. And so that will be paid for from local activities if the board approves and the city approves moving forward by increasing the Brownfield plan amount. But we can allocate, I believe, some dollars from the local Brownfield fund. As you may recall, that was a very large fund and provided a whole lot of money. We can afford to take 450 out of that. I think the fund, if we totally cash it out in our capabilities, is up to $3 to $4 million. So it certainly makes sense to allocate those costs. So we will provide that for next month. They will be conducting the activity. It appears that they're going to be installing the vapor mitigation system in November. And they've done some site work and will continue to do some site work that would fall under these eligible activities. But Act 381 provides for us to use local dollars for environmental activities and local and state dollars for non-environmental activities that are conducted prior to the approval of a brownfield plan, as long as they're included in that subsequent plan. So they can continue with those activities under the Act, and we can provide them with a structure for reimbursement down the road. They're still working with DLP, the easiest arrangement. They're still working with DLP to try and come up with $450,000 upfront. And that would be the easiest way to handle everything. We wouldn't have to really amend any documents. We could just add that to the bill for DLP and pay them out at the end for that. But they're still kind of working through that process and trying to figure those items out. So we may have some other reimbursement agreements or amendments or things of that nature. I'm hoping that DLP will provide them with the cash, and that would be the easiest way to work through it. So I want to give you an update on that and then come back next month, or see what folks' input is and then come back next month.
Mac, does if we do that from the local revolving fund, when that TIF gets paid, does it go back into the revolving fund, or how does that work? Yeah,
it actually is a little bit different than kind of a transfer from the existing cash in the local brownfield fund. What I'm suggesting is we move the budget line item now from the local brownfield fund into the eligible activities. So we wouldn't be paying for it up front like we might for an allocation for the brownfield fund. That will come back in. We can still capture for the brownfield fund, but we would have a little bit of a cap in terms of that capture on the DLP project.
Okay.
Answer that okay?
Yeah. Any other questions for Mac about this?
I think Cody had a question if I didn't see that.
Sorry, do we know I guess, can you maybe even explain a little bit more, what exactly would the additional funding be going toward?
Yep.
Do you know the specifics on that?
Yep. There's, they originally came in and had $300,000 for site preparation activities, the clearing, the land balancing that they had on that, some of the excavation, the earth movement, and being prepped for that was the $300,000. They had quite a bit of work to do to get that site ready to be able to construct the building. So that's the $300,000. They did some sampling when they were acquiring the property for due diligence, identified some indication that there may be some need for a vapor mitigation system, did some additional sampling and verified the need for that vapor mitigation system, like is going on at the townhouse in the Fairfields. They had exceedance of those levels. So they put in basically a drain system underneath and a barrier to prevent any of those vapors from coming in. And then those vapors are drawn and then exhausted up above so they don't enter the building. Those are the two primary activities.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mac.
Thank you.
All right. Now the Municipal Services Center Huntington Bank invoice MBRA bond. Mac, anything to say about this?
No, these are interest payments. Gives you an idea, I think, of the revenue stream that's happening with DLP, that these are just the interest payments for the municipal bonds for both the service center and for the road improvements that are there. So have an interest payment and then principal and interest payment later in the year.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to pay $395,650 to Huntington. Callie, thanks. Looking for a second. Matt, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed? That motion carries. And I'll put this aside for signature, Sherry.
Okay.
And then road improvements. We have an MBRA infrastructure bond and administrative fee, which is $192,960 and $500. Anything about this that we need to talk about, Mac?
I know this is for the road.
Yeah, right. So looking for a motion to pay both of those, $192,960 and the $500. Dennis, thank you. Looking for a second. Matt, thank you. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? And that carries. All right. Now we're to Customs House Development and Reimbursement Agreement, which is 11E1. Mac, anything about this?
Yep, happy to introduce this as an update. I think the board is aware that the City Commission on Tuesday night approved the Brownfield Plan after the public hearing, approved the purchase agreement between Customs House and the city for acquisition of the easement parcel in fee simple, and approved this development and reimbursement agreement for the project, since the city is a party to that agreement in seeking reimbursement as well. So the agreement is presented to the Brownfield Authority as the kind of final party in that. There is one more sort of administrative activity to take. This is kind of the conclusion of all of the documentation, one more administrative activity, and that's closing on the agreement, or excuse me, on the property there, which is anticipated in November, I believe, if I'm mistaken. This is presented to you. We don't anticipate any city bonds being issued for this, and as part of the conversation and negotiation, the allocation, the TIF allocation, is paid out on a pro rata share of approved eligible activity expenses. Much like any of the other projects we have, where there might be some other non-bond projects, that those are paid out on a pro rata share between the city and between the developers. So whoever kind of conducts the activities, submits those for payment, that's the numerator, and then the denominator is both of the projects there. So and I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's the only kind of difference with this one, is we don't anticipate any bonds being approved, and the allocation is on a pro rata share between the two parties.
Cody, you had a question?
Yeah, Mac, to my understanding, the state did not do the kind of 50-50 share of this like they would have typically. Do you have any idea as to why?
Yeah, the state has been and is now even more becoming more and more restrictive of the types of projects that it's funding. They are focused on job creation, job redevelopment as a primary purpose, and typically don't support residential only projects. The exception to that might be a mixed use project where there is other kinds of activities. Or even though it wasn't included in their strategic plan, our subsequent conversations and issues about that is that they might look at a workforce housing project and participate in that. But this project didn't hit their kind of criteria. I've had lots of conversations. We're continuing to have conversations about understanding the need for them to be judicious with their grant programs, where there's a fixed amount of pie to go around, and they've got to utilize those dollars in the best way. But for these projects, you're growing your own pie, and to have a little bit more flexibility in the kind of projects. In addition, something that kind of irks me a little bit is that the state gets all the benefits. They're going to get their state tax capture out of this, and we're the ones who are making all of the investment on the project. And so, but those are ongoing conversations, I'll have to say. But in this case, they were not supportive of state tax capture.
Right. Because in theory, let's say the payoff for it would have been 15 years. It's now like 30 for us because the city's the only one floating bill at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It did extend that deadline. I'll say that the DDA would have captured all of the taxes on this because they have kind of first rights to those. And so there's not necessarily a loss to the taxing jurisdictions because those are already captured. The exception is the intermediate school district. The DDA doesn't capture intermediate school district, but in this case, they would have gone. And so it was the DDA who was kind of mainly foregoing these taxes for that project.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the development reimbursement agreement. Callie, looking for a second. Rob, thank you. Any further discussion about this item from anybody? Okay, all in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That passes. And this one is ready to be signed. That's right? This one's
No, I think that'll be signed after the closing.
okay.
Then we'll capture signatures.
Okay, so we don't sign this one today then. Okay.
Right.
David, just one quick note. I see that David and Nicole Gregory are on the line. I'm not sure if they want to
Oh,
just
yeah, that's right.
comment quickly and then they can kind of move off. So.
Yeah, Gregory, so you'd like to say anything?
Pat and everybody, Perry, David Gregory. I don't think you want to see me this morning, so I'll spare you that. But thank you very much to Sherry and Mac and the entire Redevelopment Authority for your hard work, your patience, your diligence, your questions. I think we've reached a great arrangement for a great project. And again, I like that it was Founders Landing has been kind of developed into a compared to a small city or village. And we're looking forward to being a part of that. So just thank you for all your assistance in this process. And we look forward to getting shovels in the ground.
Thanks very much. Okay, then also under Customs House, we have the interlocal agreement between MBRA and DDA, which has already been signed by DDA and now comes back to us. So we need, I guess I'm looking for a motion to approve this interlocal agreement. We haven't already approved. Did we already approve this? And we're just waiting for signature now, or do we need to approve it still?
Yeah, you approved it at the last meeting.
That's what I thought. Okay, so all we need, this is just, I'm going to sign this when we have witnesses and stuff. So
Yes. Yep.
okay.
Can I ask a favor? I didn't double check there. If you could just have another motion to authorize that. I couldn't remember whether that was in play or not.
Sure.
You can verify it, but I had thought that, it was kind of talked about and done there, but I wasn't real sure. So I guess.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve this interlocal agreement between DDA and MBRA for Customs House. Cody, looking for a second. Dennis, any questions or discussion about this? All in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That passes. And Sherry, so you'll have to, I'll put this aside for signature, but obviously I won't sign it till we're in front of witnesses and notaries and all that, but.
Right, I'll be in touch on getting that set up.
Okay, great.
Because we'll need Matt as well.
Right. Okay, so now we're to F, 11F, which is Upper Peninsula State Bank Marquette Branch. And the first item is the MSF Act 31 work plan for non-environmental. Mac?
Yep, very similarly, in order to get state tax capture for non-environmental eligible activities, a MSF Act 31 work plan has to be submitted. It lays out the plans and is consistent with the brownfield plan that the authority and the city commission approved, and we'd appreciate authorization to submit the plan officially.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve this plan. Cody, looking for a second. Matt, thank you. Any questions or discussion about this item? Okay, all in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? Yeah, I got you. That was unanimous in favor, so that passes. And I don't see anything that needs a signature on this. Is that right, Mac?
That's correct.
Good. And then the development reimbursement agreement, still for the same project.
Yep. I was just going to say, this looks like a fitness class here with everybody kind of raised.
Yeah, right.
And stuff. So, this is the standard development and reimbursement agreement with that same standard language. We do have the city bonds that would be anticipated for the water main replacement included in this. So this is part of the standard agreement and arrangement, and would request approval from the board for the agreement.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the development reimbursement agreement. Cody, looking for a second. Matt, any further questions or discussion about this? All in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. All opposed? That passes. This one has a place for signature. Is it actually ready to be signed? Matt?
No.
No. All right, so I'll put this in the not signed pile. Good. And then we have another interlocal agreement between MBRA and LDFA this time. And this one hasn't been signed yet by anybody. And so I'm looking for a motion to approve this interlocal agreement. Callie, looking for a second. Dennis, any questions about this, issues? All in favor say yes or raise your hand. Yes. Opposed? That passes. Is this one ready to be signed? I know we need witnesses and everything, but this one will be signed now, right, Sherry?
Yes.
Okay, put this in this pile. All right. Mac, the City Commission presentation request for research on allocations.
Yeah, now we got some discussion. At David's outstanding presentation at the City Commission, Commissioner Stonehouse asked for ways, I think it was focused on the library, to make the library whole in brownfield tax capture. Some concern expressed on the library board. I will say that part of that may come from effective lobbying from the library state association to provide for exemptions from all other TIF authorities, LDFAs, DDAs, that the library can act under certain circumstances, can act to withdraw or exempt themselves from capture. The state legislature did not provide that same capability for brownfield authorities at that time, kind of explicitly. They certainly had the option, but did not extend that application. So libraries are kind of, I think, particularly sensitive, about that and raise that issue. One of the things that was asked is, can we exempt them? Does the authority have the ability to exempt them from capture, to do that, on our own action or of the governing body of the city? And the act is pretty clear that the capture has to apply to all of the taxing jurisdictions, to the levy of all taxing jurisdictions, as I've highlighted in the definition. And it actually explicitly says you can't enter into an agreement to share the taxes. So that doesn't provide us with much capability to make anything, to do any arrangements or make any arrangements with the brownfield plan itself and with TIF capture, which we're limited by the act in that way. There is an option, a little bit of conversation is that if the library engages in eligible activities, we may be able to reimburse them funding from the local brownfield fund. Those are, captured. We have many limitations on how we can capture dollars and what we can use it for. All those dollars that we capture have to be used for eligible activities on eligible property. So one option and opportunity is that if there is an infrastructure project of any of the taxing jurisdictions, for example, only within the city of Marquette, it would have to be, the project would have to be conducted in the city of Marquette. There may be an opportunity that the local brownfield fund may be able to help pay some of those costs. Could also pay for lead and asbestos abatement, demolition, and site preparation on a project that is within the city as well. One of the things, and so that was the other, just to close the other loop, we can't really give the dollars to the library for general operating or anything else. They don't meet the definition of infrastructure. So that's kind of an important point as well. We can't just allocate dollars to them directly as an eligible activity. But as I mentioned, we might be able to support projects where we can spend eligible activities on projects that they may have. Sherry, in conversation with Sherry and I, noted that the library went through a big improvement process fairly recently. last year or two in that process. And one of the things that we were thinking about is there may be an option if they were doing renovation within the building, they probably had to do a lead and asbestos survey. They may have had, if they were disturbing any areas where there was asbestos, they would have to abate that material, and any of the selective demolition that they had to do, removing any of the HVAC systems or any things of that nature. So on that project, and as I mentioned before, you do have the ability to reimburse costs that have already been incurred as long as they're included in a subsequent brownfield plan. And so that, we could proceed, speak with the library, kind of get consensus if that's what the approach wants to be here, communicate that back to the city in response to the question, see if they'd like to move forward on that process. And then we could communicate with the library to see out of their schedule of values what there might be eligible activities that the Brownfield Fund may be able to support for that project. That would be available to any taxing jurisdiction, which I think is fair in that situation if they do have a project. And that's kind of what the local Brownfield Fund is for, is to help support local projects, either public or private. It has the flexibility to grant those dollars, and so it doesn't have to have tax reimbursement coming back. So those are kind of the things that we laid out. The one other sort of caveat is that right now we have to pass a brownfield plan for these projects, because eligible property definition currently includes, and a brownfield plan is passed for the property. It has to qualify as contaminated, blighted, functionally obsolete, or a historic resource, which the library may be. But they have to have a brownfield plan. Right now, there's an act going through the state, because it's kind of painful to do this for a simple allocation to a project, to remove the requirement to do a brownfield plan as long as it meets the qualification status. So we'll see if that passes. We may not need to go through that final step of passing a brownfield plan to be able to utilize local brownfield revolving fund dollars for projects. So I think kind of after all that, in essence, if the board is interested, we could explore the opportunity to look at reimbursement from the local brownfield fund for eligible activities conducted by the library or other taxing jurisdictions in the city for these projects.
And Mac, I'd like to say something, since I actually had an exchange with Commissioner Stonehouse at the presentation, to clarify what I meant by what I said at that time and what I didn't mean. So I mentioned to Commissioner Stonehouse that I was interested personally, and I think the Brownfield Board is probably interested in doing something to help the library. Here's what I meant by that. I meant I would like to find a way for some of us or all of us to meet with some of them or all of them. That could be people associated with the library, people in the commission, both, to have a meeting of the minds about how Brownfield works and why it is advantageous to the library that we do these things. That the library is actually helped by what we're doing. This notion that they are harmed by what we're doing is false, and it's provably false. And I would like to have a meeting of the minds with them to explain why I believe that's true. And I'd like to hear them out, in case I'm wrong, to find out why I might be wrong and in what cases I might be wrong. And I would like to explore this openly and candidly to see if we can't get more on the same page about why we're both pulling in the same direction. Now, at the same time, I'm perfectly happy to hear about things which fit under brownfield funding, which is not at all what I was talking about with Commissioner Stonehouse. And I would evaluate it just like I would evaluate any other project. If the library fits under eligible properties, and if they have eligible activities, I'm all for it, just like I would be anywhere else. But I'm not looking for a way to squeeze this thing into funding for the library. We got to find a way to do it. And it doesn't matter to me if an individual elected official thinks that would be a good idea. It only matters to me whether it makes sense under the Brownfield law. So that's where I'm coming from. And I think that we can make a lot of progress with the library. I think if we have more conversations about this, we'll end up on the same page, or at least more on the same page than we are now. But I'm not that concerned about trying to shunt money from here to there. So go ahead, Cody.
Two things. One, your idea with kind of having meeting of the minds thing. You know, anytime you have more discussion and bring people in and have more conversation, usually we end up with better results. So I think it's a great idea. And Mac, I think the idea that you were talking about was very clever. However, when you were saying it, I kind of had a similar thought as, well, we would welcome a plan from anyone, but we'd still base it off the merits of the plan itself. Because obviously we'd all like to help the library, but again, to what he was just saying, it's, you know, not gonna kind of, I like the how you phrased us, kind of squeeze the funding in there is probably a good way to phrase that.
I think one point of concern is that, you know, some of these smaller projects are being approved and, you know, maybe they don't need brownfield funding for it. Like the UP State Bank was a particular sticking point for this commissioner. And one of the discussions I had is maybe it's time to start using that local revolving fund we've been developing and seeing how we can leverage that for a project like UP State Bank rather than taking their improvements off the tax rolls for 15 years. So, I mean, that might be another way of looking at it is, you know, this fund's been, you know, being developed for a little bit now. Maybe it's time to start looking at how we leverage it and avoid taking, you know, money from the library, even though it's not really taking money from them. But, you know, this project could probably be done with some assistance, not taking a TIF out of it.
Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with both what you and Cody said as far as if there's a way through the normal process to help them. But I do think that they need maybe a better dialogue with us as to understanding long-term as they do their 5, 10-year, 15-year projection on revenue, where things are coming. And great examples are the hospital. We booked it at 180 and it came out at 330. And so they're getting a lot more money out of that project. I think the second thing on Sean's point, I guess I would be against that because I guess my understanding is this revolving fund, this slush fund, so to speak, is for the public good, like the peers and everything else. So maybe we take that and do the infrastructure piece of the bank, but I still think the brownfield is the brownfield is the brownfield, and that specific commissioner just has a problem, I think, with not being able to control all the money that comes through there, and he's never quite understood that. I would support the library too, but they could have come forward to us with their big renovation project. There might have been things we could have done on the fly that would have helped them through that, and they maybe get less grant money or whatever. But I'm not really a big fan of trying to tweak or bend the existing process to force feed somebody that's a little louder. I mean, I really think their state association and their lobbying group really should have done a better job with the legislature to make sure that this wasn't a hole that they didn't cover. It's nice that we want to help them, but I think we just bring them into the fold, make them part of the process. And because that's a big old building they've got. And I just think they're going to have other projects that we could help them with and minimize their expense out of pocket and their fundraising so they can use that money elsewhere.
Cody?
Yeah, I would add to that as far as lobbying efforts at Lansing, you know, I know this phrase gets brought up a lot, especially lately with the whole dark store loophole thing. Just to put in context, a few years ago, one box store within city limits going to a special tax tribunal for that status. It's the reason why the library is closed on Sundays now. So as far as lobbying efforts go, I think that looking at things like that is doing a lot more harm to the library than we are on trying to do public good infrastructure investments.
And then I had one more comment to respond to Sean a little bit, and that is, I think there's a legitimate question within the brownfield realm that has nothing to do with the library about whether or not a project is likely only going to happen because of brownfield or not. I mean, that's definitely within our wheelhouse, right? If we see a project that we think this is going to happen, there's nothing needed from brownfield for this to happen, then that will be a lower priority for us just naturally than a place where without brownfield, it's not going to happen. If we don't do brownfield, this won't happen. Now, sometimes we can't have perfect foreknowledge. Maybe there are sites where it's questionable whether it would happen with us. It's definitely going to happen with us. It may or may not without us. And so there's gray areas. And so I think having that discussion like we would anytime is perfectly appropriate. And I think that both the city commission and the brownfield authority should wrestle with those issues, thoughtfully and openly. But if both the commission and the brownfield figure that it fits under the law, it is a good property, it does have eligible activities, and we think that as a policy matter, it's a good idea to apply this tool in this case, then the library's influence has nothing to do with it. And if we're right that it's needed, once again, it's simply not true that we're stealing someone's TIF because the baseline TIF is unaltered. Baseline TIF continues. So nothing is reduced, only something is gained. And the question is whether the library should get part of the gain immediately or after brownfield activities. And if it's brownfield, the question is already answered under the law, brownfield first. There's just no way around it. As a theoretical matter, I think that's a good policy, but somebody can change the law if they disagree with it.
David, I forget the name of the fund, but the library does gain sooner than everyone else. There is a particular loan fund that's exempt from the TIF. But they do gain sooner and earlier and larger than everyone else.
Yeah, there's a debt fund that's not captured that the library has in relation that was approved that is not captured. You're right, Rob.
Okay, well, great discussion. And I think, again, I'm going to just reiterate, I would like to find more opportunities to have conversations with folks at the library and at the commission. So, Sherry and Mac, and any opportunities any of you see, we should jump on those and try to create them if we can. And more to talk about later, I think. So, anything else?
If I may, I just wanted to comment that not noticed is that it was really the influence of the Brownfield Authority that got a $25,000 award from DLP. And this was about 2-3 years ago, I believe, Mac, when they were when DLP was sensitive to the library and their issues. And so they arranged to make a grant, if you will, to the library. So, subtly, we've had a very positive influence. And this is something I would want to share at the November meeting as well. And I think that will be a good opportunity to bring up some of these things. But as Mac and I've talked about, looking at, if there is something that could be helpful, but at this point, it's research based, not policy, certainly. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks. All right. Any other comments on this? Okay. So the last item is, I think it's the last item, is Max invoices, which total $7,400. So I'm looking for a motion to approve payment of these invoices. Callie, second is Cody. All in favor, say yes or raise your hand.
Just one quick moment.
Oh, wow. I was trying to do this fast.
I know you're trying to do it quick.
And you're going to interrupt.
Man, what's wrong with me?
Go ahead, Mac.
Just a quick calculation. The total is actually 7380.
Oh, thank you, Mac.
Math calculation there. So.
All right. So we're approving. So this is the motion is for 7380. You still good with that, Callie? And good with that, Cody? Good. All right. All in favor, say yes or raise your hand. All opposed? That motion carries.
I'll try never to slow that motion down again.
Yeah. There were 2 public comments, and I don't see any new participants. And Sean, I assume you don't have anybody waiting anywhere.
Oh,
Great. So that's it for public comments. And now comments from directors. I'll go around the screen. Cody, any comments this
No, it's great to see everybody. Helps me stop losing my mind, I think.
Good. Callie? Nothing? Okay. Matt?
Oh, just I definitely appreciate your mentality on things, and since you've been the chair here, so just keep it up. I appreciate it. So
Thanks very much. Rob?
Yeah, nice work at the commission, David. But otherwise, I'm good. Good to see everyone.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody? Okay, so I think that's it. It only took an hour and 5 minutes. Yeah, I hear somebody.
No, Dennis is there yet, I think, isn't he?
Oh, is Dennis still here?
It looks like he popped back in the waiting room. 1 second.
Okay, yeah, we'll get him back and see if he's got any comments. Dennis, are you there?
Yes.
Do you have any comments this month?
No, I do not. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So I think we're done. Okay.
Other than setting a meeting for November.
Oh,
It will
okay.
be November 15th. So if that fits everyone's schedule, we would set that meeting.
November what?
November 15th?
That's
I'll be in the woods without
Sunday.
cell service.
that's a Sunday.
Oh, wait a minute. The 19th. But yeah, I forgot about hunting season. Sorry, everybody.
So is the 19th okay or no?
Yep.
Works for me.
Yep.
Okay, that looks good. All right, I think we're good with that.
Okay, good. I'll go ahead and post it. Thank you.
All right. So anything else from anybody? Otherwise, we are adjourned.
Callie, video up there.
New board member, Kat?
Everybody.
New board member.
Yeah, this is Amen.
For public comment there.
Letting him join.